Hey, welcome back to the shop. So got a lot of stuff to do this week. So anybody who lives in this area, I live just outside Augusta, Georgia in Grovetown. It's Masters Week, so there's a lot of local folks that are out of town because some people rent out properties and whatnot for Masters, and certain parts of Augusta near Augusta National are pretty packed. But I have a lot of work to get done, so with most people out of town, this is a perfect opportunity. So few projects. So I've been in the process of making a bunch of cutting boards over the past week or so, and through the next week or two, which I'll get to here in a moment, actually. So I'm applying for Arts in the Heart of Augusta this year, which is a big event that they hold downtown Augusta every year in September. Now you have to apply to it, so I have to have a fully stocked booth set up in my submission to be able to apply for it, which I don't have any doubts that I'll get in. I just got to get a bunch more stuff made to populate everything, plus deal with regular sales and whatnot in the meantime. So let me jump over and talk about what we're going to do in this video. So last week I got some of these cutting boards pretty much finished. They've been all sanded, finished, everything, including lasering my logo on them. They've been water popped, finished, sanded, all that stuff. They just need to be oiled and waxed now. I'm not going to do that quite yet because I have a bunch more panels that I need to get planed down and turned into cutting boards. So these runs and the ones I'm going to be doing today in this videos are all, include a lot of different exotic woods and stuff like this. So a lot of wenge, a lot of padok, a lot of babinga, a lot of leopard wood, and a few others, including some of the domestic hardwoods. So let's jump over here. And over here I have 12 more. So those cutting boards that were over there came from 6 panels that I had glued up, and I've got 12 more panels right here for various size cutting boards that need to be planed down. But before I get to planing those down, I also have a bunch of other strips. Some are good to use in cutting boards. Some of them had a lot of defects in them. So I need to go through this pile right here and see what I can recover from here to make probably maybe even 2 or 3 more panels and get some more cutting boards out of them, or maybe other stuff. But I'm gonna get to sorting through these and we'll see what we can make for panels. Get those glued up today. While those are drying, we can start planing stuff down, cutting stuff, and then somewhere in between the lull periods, I have to make some more plant stands for a local greenhouse. And actually I've been making them for them, so it's a little bit of income on the side and kind of fun to experiment with different styles and whatnot. So let's get to it. Okay, so I've used, still got a bunch of strips to make a little bit shorter board, and I actually might do that to make a couple smaller ones because I'm trying to make some smaller ones also. But these 2 that we're gonna glue up, actually I need to trim to a couple pieces real quick. But this one's pretty symmetrical, mostly padok, hard maple, sapele, a little bit of walnut in there, so symmetrical each side. This one is more of a fruit salad so I didn't have any long strips of duplicates on the thicker strips, so we'll just make a random across board and see how it turns out. So I'm going to get those strips that need it trimmed down a hair, and we're going to get in the other room. We're going to glue up these 2 panels, let those sit, and then we'll get on to planing stuff down and making some other stuff. Okay, so it's the next day. I got sidetracked a little bit yesterday working on a couple laser projects, but I did get the rest of the panels, the two, I think it was two remaining planed down, cut up into boards. So now that I went through and counted them, I've got 31 to sand down. Some of them on the end down there already done, just waiting on oiling and finishing. So what I like to do is the fronts and backs of these boards, I'm gonna sand down. We'll move over. I'm gonna sand them down with 80 grit, just rough on the face and back sides of them. And then I'm gonna move over to the edge sander. I'm gonna sand down all the edges, get them nice and square and flat. Then we're gonna round over all the edges with a 1/8 inch. So we'll move over to the router table for that. Then we go on to finish sanding and, moving up 120, 220, 320. I do 320 after I water pop all the cutting boards. So we'll get to that. Let's move over, start finish, not really finishing, but rough sanding. So there's gonna be a lot of sanding in the next part here. So if you're into that type thing, cool. If not, you might wanna fast forward. All right, I actually stopped the time lapse right there because I'm doing something, a kind of tactic I use to try to salvage boards sometimes that I find have defects. So this one, I don't know how I didn't catch it. It has a hairline crack. This board right here is split running here. So I'm gonna zoom in here a moment. I've got a little bead of glue here, but what you can do is take a shop vac, or like I've got a Festool dust extractor. It's got pretty good suction. Is what you can do is run a bead of glue on the top there. Go ahead and get quite a bit on there. Then you can take the vacuum and pull it through the crack by holding the other ends of it. So I'm gonna zoom in as I do this, and you're gonna see it pull through there. As long as you can get it all the way to the start of that crack and vacuum it all the way through to the other side of the board, you can reclamp it up and then salvage the board. Otherwise, if I can't get it all the way in there and see it come through on the back side, I'm not even I won't sell this one. I'll probably give it to a friend or something, just because I can't take money for something like that. But let me zoom in real quick and I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, so I had done a little bit actually before I started filming this, so probably some of it had started to kind of tack up in there. So it did pull through a little bit, but on the first run, I don't know if you can see it here, on that section I was doing right there, the glue actually started coming through that seam right there. You can see a little bit, kind of peek it out on all the, quite a few parts of the seam right there. So this one, like I couldn't get it very far in there, but sometimes depending on the crack, you can get it all the way through all the sections. I'm gonna clamp it back together and save this one. Maybe it'll be a family gift or something, but sometimes you can save them, sometimes you can't.
One eternity later.
All right, so we're back for day 3 of finishing these cutting boards. I think there's right around 40 or 41 of them. Yesterday, so we got the corners rounded over, we got the edges sanded on the belt sander, and we did most of the rough sanding on the surfaces of these down to 120. Now, I am switching over to a different sander here, just a regular random orbit sander, because I'm getting ready to do the edges with 120. And from there, we're gonna jump up to 220, get most of the sanding done. After 220, later today, once we get all that done, we're gonna spray these down with water, let them sit overnight with the dehumidifier running, which it is now because we had a really bad storm yesterday. And then tomorrow we're gonna come back with 320 and sand off all the raised fibers and everything. And so let's just jump into this, another probably full day of sanding and finishing. Hey, I just hooked my mic back up because I actually want to bring something up real quick. You notice even probably through the speed of the time lapses, especially once I get to sometimes 120 down through 220 and 320 finish sanding, I tend to change out my sandpaper pretty frequently. I'm burning through the last of my supply of all my Festool sandpapers because recently I've switched over to the 3M Cubitron 2 stuff. I just find that it lasts so much longer. It's a different material, and that's a whole nother can of worms. But what I do want to bring up is anybody who's sanded in grain for a long time, like when I do the edges on here on the edge of the boards, or even in grain cutting boards, stuff like that, know that there's a pretty big difference between when the sandpaper's actually cutting and sanding, or you're starting to get into the realm of what could be called burnishing. And that's really where it's rubbing the surface, but it's not actually cutting. You'll notice it takes a lot longer to sand stuff. So typically what I do as I go through sandpaper is find stuff. Probably wouldn't do it with the rough stuff, otherwise you're not gonna have knuckles. I like using my knuckles. So I do 4 or 5 boards here, the test, things start slowing down. When I think it gets to a point it's probably to change out sandpaper, usually what I do is I take a knuckle or two and drag it across the face of the sandpaper. Now, if you do that with a piece that's dulling, you're going to feel like, yes, it's still rough. So most people would think, oh, well, it's still good because it's still rough. Well, there's a huge difference, and you can feel it between when it's rubbing your knuckles, or pick any other soft, sensitive material, or actually if you drag it, you can feel it actually cut, and it's actually going to, almost like scratching, the skin. Now, if you're doing that a bunch, I probably wouldn't recommend that. Otherwise, you're going to look like you're participating in Fight Club. But it's a good way to check. So like the thing is once you get to that point and your sandpaper is getting dull, you're kind of spinning your wheels. So when you're doing a huge run of stuff, and it's really night and day with doing in-grain cutting boards, you're thinking like, hey, I'm making my sandpaper go a lot longer and kind of stretch out and last, but you're wasting a lot of time kind of spinning your wheels sanding when you're using sandpaper that really needs to be changed out. So think about that. I burned through quite a few pieces of sandpaper right there, but the time that I save by efficiently and determining when to swap out that sandpaper, it pays for itself in the long run. But this stuff doesn't last as long as that's a whole nother can of worms. Like I said about the 3M Cubitron 2, I love that stuff, but I'm kind of bearing through, switching out a bunch of sandpaper. I'm almost out of all this stuff. So after this project, should be able to continue with the new stuff. So let's get back to it. We'll do 220 pass on all these now, and then also the rounding of the corners over there before we water pop them later tonight. Okay, I'm glad that phase of sanding is over with. That was actually, today was probably the worst part. So we're getting ready to water pop these. So actually I got to go grab my spray, my spray bottle. It's sitting over there. So really it's just wetting them and letting them dry overnight so that the grains on the surface edges, everything kind of raises before we do the final sanding, which will be 320. And that'll be an easy sanding because it's light. It's really just to smooth everything out once we do this. So I'm gonna get to it, get these set up on these two boards right here, standing up so they can, I've got a dehumidifier running in here. So they'll have nice circulation and dry throughout the night. So let's get to it. All right, so we got our bunch of cutting boards here, and thankfully there's about 13 of them that are already done over on the cabinets over there. So dried overnight with the dehumidifier running, and you can feel on some of the types of wood, the grain kind of popped up quite a bit. So we're gonna sand them with 320, hit the edges, everything with the sanding sponge just to smooth everything out, and we'll get on to oiling these. All right, so finally finished up these cutting boards, got them all waxed and everything, and actually most of them still have a good bit of wax on there. So I have them set in my shipping room on these shelves right now because my actual storage room for cutting boards, which is downstairs, is pretty full right now. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I have an event coming up, so I need to start stocking up a bunch more so I have plenty on hand. So there was 44 in total. And these two down here were some 3D ingrain ones that I had finished just prior to starting this project. So as you can see right now, I got a bunch of cutting boards out of this run. I probably won't do such a big run next time, maybe about half that, just because all the sanding about killed me. But I hope you enjoyed, and I'll be getting some more videos up here shortly. And if you like, click that subscribe button, give it a like, or leave a comment down below, and I'll try to get back to everybody as fast as I can. So I'll see you next time.